Welcome back to my annual education series. I do want to start off by saying the policy here at the Oklahoma City Zoo is that we wear our masks when we're this close, so that is what we're going to do. It's also in all inside buildings as well. But today we're here with Erica. Erica runs a bunch of the programs here at the Oklahoma City Zoo. So what is the focus of a lot of your programs here?
Sure. So I'm the Family and Programs Manager here at the zoo, and I have a myriad of different programs that fall under my jurisdiction essentially. And so I am over overnight programs, any type of family program, so that's from all the way down to our toddlers who are 3-year-olds, all the way up to the oldest person who wants to come visit the zoo. We have scout programs, we have public birthday parties sometimes, so there's a lot of different things that we do. And one of my favorite things is going on outreach and going out into the community, because that means that those people who don't get to come to our zoo typically, I can bring myself and my animals to see them.
And what are some of the points that you like to hit on in a lot of your programs?
Yeah.
Obviously, animals.
Animals, yes. So the draw is the animals, and that's the way that I keep them engaged with me. But I can tell them a myriad of different things when I have their attention. So I like to be able to focus a lot on conservation because it's something that a lot of people have heard before, but they don't know really what it means. And so we can talk about how animals are disappearing, but they don't know necessarily how they're able to help. And there's a lot of simple things that they can do, from recycling to visiting the zoo, from coming to the programs that I do and learning about the animals and becoming inspired by them. All those tiny things for conservation really do make a huge impact if enough people do them.
And you said animals are the draw, so who's this little guy here?
Very good. So this is Mortimer, and Mortimer is a sheltopusic, also known as a glass lizard. Now, the reason why they're called a glass lizard is because it's rumored that if you were to drop them, they would shatter into 1,000,000 pieces. But obviously that's not true, but there is a little bit of truth to the myth. And so the important part here is his tail. So this is his body. His tail starts about here and goes all the way down. Now he is a unique animal in the aspect of lizards because he doesn't lose his whole tail. He can lose it at any single vertebrae along the tail, which is actually really great because most lizards will store their fat in their tail. And so if they drop it to get away from a predator, they have to eat so much more, they've got to rebuild those fat sources to be able to rebuild their tail. He's not going to waste it. He's only going to lose the part that he needs to and then grow back just that little bit.
So it's a neat little animal. So what other animals that you do to kind of grab people's interest at programs?
So we have over 40 animal ambassadors in our education program, and that ranges all the way from the tiniest millipede or cockroach, which are my favorite animals to bring out, all the way up to a prehensile-tailed porcupine. We work really closely with a falcon in our department. So we try to bring animals that people might see in their day-to-day lives so that we can have that local native kind of connection. We also like to bring out more exotic animals that they may not ever have the chance to see in the wild. Because that's the important thing, is that the wild is disappearing and people aren't really going to get the chance to get there as often as they maybe would like to, or if ever. So if I can show you a prehensile-tailed porcupine that lives in the rainforest, and I say that, hey, this animal's losing its home due to logging and whatever it happens to be, you might be like, hey, well, I really like this porcupine and I really care about its wild counterparts. I want to save it, so I'm going to save the rainforest. And so there's just a lot of those little itty-bitty connections that we can make with people by bringing these ambassadors out and being able to connect with them.
It's really important to build those connections and those experiences with little kids as they grow up. They're going to remember that. Even as an adult now, I have some money I can donate and kind of help the causes I learned about when I was little, and now maybe have some more animal lovers, more zookeepers and things like that, and that help build the passion and spread conservation.
I love that you brought that up because the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing right now is because Zookeeper Joe came to my school when I was in 3rd grade. So I love animals, I've always loved animals, and the outreach that I do is something that I experienced when I was younger. And so Zookeeper Joe is like, hey, I need somebody to help me out. Who wants to hold my snake? And I was like, ooh, me, it's me, I want to hold the snake. And so I was able to hold that animal while he was talking about facts and things like that. But from that moment on, I would go home and I would set up my teddy bears and I would do little presentations for my mom. And so anytime that anybody asks, why do you do what you do, or how did you get here? And I was like, well, I want to be somebody's Zookeeper Joe. And I know that I have that kind of impact on children because I did a camp 5 years ago and I talked about palm oil and how it's degrading the rainforest in Sumatra and Borneo. And I taught a child named Michaela about using the palm oil scanner app, and she still, 5 years later, makes her mom scan all of their products. And her mom comes, she's like, Erica, I haven't been able to eat legit mac and cheese in years, but we're saving the orangutans. And that just means so much to me because I know that I made a difference in that child's life. And if I can do that even on the tiniest level for everybody I interact with, I'm doing good in this world.
Absolutely. So what kind of programs do you have? Like what specific programs do you have?
Yeah, so this year we actually have an overnight program called Zoo Olympics, which is all about the amazing adaptations of animals. So we focus a little bit on like human abilities and like who jumps the highest, who runs the fastest. And we're like, well, really humans do it for fun and competition, but animals do it for survival. So let's see and talk about the fastest land animal, the cheetah. You know, let's talk about the fastest diver, the peregrine falcon. Let's talk about hagfish and how they create slime and nobody wants to eat them because they're gross. But those kind of little things, and then interspersing the animal ambassadors that I have, are the things that kids are going to remember. I've been stopped at a grocery store and they're like, Mom, she showed me an armadillo. And I'm like, I sure did. Like, do you remember me? I'm like, I sure do. But those are the kind of meaningful experiences that I can provide to the community by creating the programs that I do.
And I also understand that you've been to Africa to do different kinds of research and conservation programs like that.
Yeah. So the Oklahoma City Zoo has this really amazing conservation program where we will send tons of money each year out to different organizations to support them in the field. But as a part of that, they also send staff people out there so that we can get that experience as well. So I was very, very lucky to be able to go to Zimbabwe probably about 4 years ago, to work with the Painted Dog Research Trust and Dr. Greg Rasmussen. So I was in Zimbabwe for 2 weeks, and it was literally, he's a researcher, I'm doing what researchers do. So we would go out into the field and drive around just looking for prints, looking for scat, looking for different kinds of things. We stayed the night in the field, and so I slept in a gunny sack, zipped up with this much room to breathe because I was scared of the little bugs that were crawling around. But I did exactly what he did. I learned the importance of why we provide him with money, and it's because these animals are critically endangered, and if we don't do something, they will disappear. And so to get on the ground and be a part of that, it's made me more of an advocate for that species specifically, but for conservation on the ground in general. I know its importance, I've seen it, and I need to share that story with the rest of the world. Yeah, so the really neat thing about those conservation projects is that it's not necessarily zoo funded. It's actually funded by our guests. So we have a really neat program called Roundup for Conservation. So anytime you purchase anything at the zoo or you buy a ticket, we'll say, hey, do you want to round up to the nearest dollar? And typically people do. That money all goes into a pot, and then that money gets sent out to the community, the international community, so that we can help with their research projects. So I can say thank you to the zoo because the zoo did send me to Zimbabwe, but really I should thank the entire community because they're the ones that really got me there by donating that money and by being impassioned for animals.
And by giving you that experience out there, you can spread your knowledge and what you saw out there to give you one-on-one experience with these animals and the conservation projects for that, and probably you're going to want to do more in the future.
Exactly, and it's really nice to be able to share that kind of story. There was a local YMCA group that came out and just wanted to talk to somebody about conservation, and so I met them at the Painted Dog the Painted Dog exhibit, and showed them some of the remnants of stuff that I brought back from the Painted Dog Research Trust. So I showed them, the wire snares, and then how they change it into art, and they sell that to raise money for conservation. I showed them the prototype of the anti-snare collar. I was able to talk to them about what it means to be a conservationist, what it means to be a researcher, and what it means to save those animals. And you just have kids that are, nodding along with you. They're really clicking, they're really getting it. And like I said, they could be the next zookeeper Joe or the next educator Erica.
So how long have you been here at the OKC Zoo?
I've been at this zoo for just about 6 years, and I've been in zoo education for 9 years.
And what degree do you have for this?
Well, I've got a couple. So I have a bachelor's degree in animal science, behavior, and well-being with a minor in biological sciences. And then after that, I went on to get my master's in education and curriculum and instruction.
Thank you so much, Erica, for telling us about some of the programs that you do here and your work in different programs.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming out and chat with me. I enjoyed it.
As did I. And thank you guys so much for watching this video. Don't forget to leave a big thumbs up down below, subscribe to my channel, and also check out my Instagram @ColeShirt. As always, I'll see you next week.